Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great. Just not cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
All right, welcome back, Tokers and Tokettes, non-token lovers of liberty as well. Radical Russ here in Washington, D.C. Yes, I'm at the Lombardi, Hotel Lombardi. You couldn't find a better hotel for a Packers fan. So I got myself, this is a pretty good time to be in Washington, D.C. Coming up next week is the normal National Lobby Day. So that's really while I'm here is next Monday and Tuesday is National Lobby Days here for normal. But it turns out tomorrow there is another one of these protests. Now, I was last here in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago, and I got to meet Adam Eidinger and the D.C. Cannabis Campaign. And these guys were having a seed giveaway, a weed and seed giveaway in front of the White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, just 4 blocks away from where I'm at right now. And it was at that event that the Secret Service moved us off of Pennsylvania Avenue and over onto H Street. But the giveaway went on as planned. And after I left D.C., the next thing we heard about was how the Obama administration is going to meet with those protesters. And it's kind of an interesting situation because the week before, they had done the protest, or a couple weeks before, they had done the April 2nd protest where they brought the big 51-foot joint that says Obama reschedule now and walked that in front of Pennsylvania Avenue. And Normal founder Keith Stropp wrote a blistering article about it, kind of calling him out for, old school tactics. And we're making it so far now. Why do this kind of clownish behavior and so forth? And it ruffled a lot of feathers. And sad to say, it turns out that Keith may have been wrong on this one because after they did their protest, they indeed got a meeting with the Obama administration. But it was a low-level staffer. It was really just kind of a, hey, we'll talk to you, so maybe they'll go away kind of thing. They're not going away. The latest post from Alternate, Philip Smith on Alternate, says that they are going to protest Friday in front of the White House, protesting for descheduling. And that's been their point here. It's like, the Obama administration's come back and said, we're moving forward on medical marijuana and so forth. And yeah, that's nice. But the point is we need to deschedule marijuana, and President Obama has the power to do so. He keeps deferring it. He keeps saying, gee, it's something Congress needs to look at. Gee, if Congress did something. No, the Controlled Substances Act gives you the power, Mr. President, through a stroke of your pen, to initiate the proceedings for descheduling of cannabis. And that's what these DC guys are getting to. So Friday, tomorrow, they're going to be rallying at the White House at 5:20 on May 20th. Now, there's a reason why 5:20 actually has some meaning. May 20th is Harry J. Anslinger's birthday. So we're going to have a 5:20 protest on 5:20 in front of the White House. I'm going to head down there tomorrow, so just giving you a heads up, no hour 2 tomorrow. Actually, wait, no. My show starts at 6, so I'll head down. Well, what time zone am I in? Wait a minute, it's Eastern time. Okay, so no, my show starts at 6, so I will head down there at 5:20, and see if I can get some interviews and some audio, and then race back here to the show and bring that audio to you. So we'll do some coverage tomorrow of the event. It's going to include DC Cannabis Campaign and Weed for Warriors. Mass cannabis consumption and escalated civil disobedience. And, we're going to protest on Harry J. Anslinger's birthday. So we'll bring you that tomorrow on the show, as well as our special interview with Mickey Norris and Lauren Vasquez, who are going to be talking up the Adult Use of Marijuana Act in California. We'll also take your calls if you've got any questions on the act. That's coming up tomorrow.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
We have your smoking section right here. This is the Cannabis Radio Network.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
It's time to Hemp Present with Inadina Stanger.
I say to you with all the fervor of my soul that God intended men to be free. Rebellion against tyranny is a righteous cause. And I believe that with every ounce of my soul, we are fighting a righteous cause because people need nature.
Marijuana! Hemp Present, only on Cannabis Radio.
Sweet sativa.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Christian convictions are under attack as never before.
Okay. Maybe you're high, too.
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your cannabis business boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your cannabis business needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
And blue blasten Gergen, Pfaffen, der blasten Schnurb, Norben. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. 8 after the hour here in Washington, D.C., and we are taking a look at some of the data. In our drug war data mines, we talked a little bit about seniors and their use of marijuana and their use of drugs. And I decided to go back and take a look at the actual data tables. So I pulled up the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, Table 1.12a, which is marijuana use in the lifetime, past year, past month by detailed age categories. Okay, so looking at this, in the age 50 to 54 group, in 2009, there were just over 1 million tokers, 1.093 million. And then at the 55 to 59 group, 720,000. 60 to 64, there were 322,000. 65 or older, 209,000. So somewhere close to 2 million, 2.2, 2.3 million, if we want to talk about how many tokers there were. Let's do the actual addition here. 720 and 322 and 209 gives us 2.344 million. This was 2009, so we're talking 7 years ago? Okay. So for the 2009 survey drug use and health, age 50 and older, 2.344 million tokers. So, looking at the most recent numbers, 2014 is our most recent numbers. Age 50 to 54, we have 1.251 million. Age 55 to 59, 1.578 million. 60 to 64, 763,000. And 65 and older, 575,000. So we add those up, the 1251 and the 1578 and the 763 and the 575, and we get 4.167 million. So from 2009 to 2014, a 5-year span, we went from 2.3 to 4.1 million tokers over the age of 50. Pretty significant. Looking at the 65 and older, remember 65 and older, there was 209 million 65 and older 5 years ago. 575,000 now. So from 209,000 to 575,000. For people over 65, it's more than doubled in 5 years. Now, those are raw numbers. It might not tell us an accurate picture because we have this demographic bubble of baby boomers, this big cohort. So as those people get older, there's just more of them, right? So let's look at it as percentages. When we look at marijuana use in the past month, marijuana use is what we're talking about, by the way, because I consider, if you're only smoking once a year, you're not really a toker, right? So looking at past month use for people 55 and 50 and older, 50 to 54, 4.9% reusing. And then at 55 to 59, it's 3.9%. At 60 to 64, it's 2.1%. And 65 and older, 0.6%. So anywhere from 0.6 to almost 5% from the ages of 50 on up. That was 2009. Looking at 2014, it's 5.3, 7.6, 4.4, and 1.3. So even the percentages are up of all these people that are using. So as a comparison, again, 65 and older was only 0.5%. Only 1 out of 200 people 65 and older were using pot once a month. It's up to 1.3 now. So again, more than double. For the 60 to 64s, 1.9 went up to 4.4. More than double. For the 55 to 59, it went from 3.1 to 7.6. Again, more than double. And looking at 50 to 54, it went from 4.9 to 5.3. Not much change at that level. But from 55 on up, certainly over the past 5 years, we have at least doubled the number of seniors that are using marijuana at least once a month. Good for them. That's all from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. By the way, if you want to look up these numbers for yourself, because I encourage you to, don't trust me, look it up for yourself. You can find such a treasure trove of information at the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, which can be found as part of the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Agency, or SAMHSA, SAMHSA.gov. So if you go to SAMHSA.gov, you can find all this data I'm talking about, not just the survey on drug use and health, but also the admittance to drug rehabs. That's in substance abuse facilities data and TEDS data and other mental health data as well. If you're having any troubles finding this stuff, just email me. You can email me radicalruss@gmail.com and I'll send you the links you need to get started. Nothing better than winning a marijuana argument using the government's own data. It's one of my favorite things. Now, one of my least favorite things. We have some great listeners out there who show up in the chat room, and oftentimes they deliver to me news that I have missed. And since I don't focus on cocaine much, I missed this story. But it's another sad story out of Texas. You remember we told the story a while back of the African-American woman in Texas who got pulled over and harassed. And the cop said he was going to pull her out of the car and light her up with his taser. And then, he claimed that he found some marijuana and then took her to jail. And they found her dead in jail. Supposedly she hung herself with a plastic bag, right? Remember that story? Well, we got another story. This is coming out of Houston Press, HoustonPress.com. Young African-American woman Simone Marshall, age 22, died after 2 weeks in the Walker County Jail. What had happened is she had a rollover accident on I-45. State troopers who showed up on the scene found her in possession of cocaine, and so they took her to jail. So when the paramedics responded to the rollover, they didn't notice any obvious injury. And the woman refused medical treatment. A second passenger in the car was also charged with possession of cocaine and bonded out the next day. But the woman, Marshall, had her bond set at $5,000 and couldn't make bail. And you know, when you make bail, some of you, if you've kept your nose clean, you may not know about this, but when you get busted, they set your bail, and then you can usually call a bail bondsman. If you're in the state, you can call a bail bondsman, and they will post the $5,000 for you if you pay them $500. Right? It's usually a 10% deal. So what we've got here is a woman who couldn't come up with $500. And this is a vastly underreported part of our criminal justice system, and that is this use of bail in a way that basically incarcerates you for being poor. If I got arrested on a $5,000 bail and I had to come up with $500 on the spot to get out of jail, it would take some time. And I don't even know if I could pull it off. I'd have to hope that the right people are home when I make the phone calls. And when you're in jail, they don't let you use your cell phone, so you got to memorize all these phone numbers, and who memorizes phone numbers anymore? But this is an epidemic in this country of people, and this isn't noted. You know, when when the Kevin Sabets of the world say, well, you know, very few people are in jail or prison for marijuana. It's like 0.2% or something, right? They always like to make this excuse to minimize prohibition, which always brings up the point, well, gee, if so few people are in prison for it, why do we bother keeping it illegal in the first place? But aside from that, those stats don't count people who are in jail because they're awaiting trial, because they can't bond out, because they can't make bail. Those stats don't pick those people up. They're awaiting trial. They haven't actually been convicted of anything. They're just charged with something. The only thing that's keeping them in jail is not having money. They're in jail for being poor. They haven't been proven guilty of anything. They're still innocent until proven guilty, even if they're poor. So thousands and thousands of people are languishing in jails right now just because they don't have the money to make bail. And this woman, Simone Marshall, was one of them. So she's in jail for 2 weeks. She gets on the phone with her family several times, tells her family that her head hurts and she feels like she's going to black out. And they called the jail. The family called the jail and said, hey, look, she says her head hurts. You know, get her to a doctor. The jail says, oh, well, we took her to a doctor in jail. And they're like, well, look, no, take her to a hospital because she's blacking out. She's got a head injury. Well, they didn't. And so on May 10th, she had a seizure, was immediately taken to the hospital then, where she was pronounced dead. So the Texas Rangers are investigating this because that's their job. They investigate any in-custody deaths. The sheriff there in Walker County says his department followed proper protocols. Isn't that always the case? Well, we did everything we were supposed to do. We followed the rules. You ever stop to consider that maybe the rules need fixing? If a woman is in a rollover car accident, you take her to the hospital. You don't offer her the option. And when her family is calling up saying she's got head trauma, you don't just shrug it off. Being jailed should not be a death sentence. We should feel confident that worst case scenario, you're the wrong person, the wrong place, the wrong time, you're misidentified. A terrible sequence of events leads you to being in jail for reasons you don't belong there. You shouldn't worry about dying.
Leave us exit stage left.
By the way, the other woman I was speaking about, Sandra Bland, was her name. Something tells me that had this woman been the white daughter of the mayor or something, maybe they'd have gotten her some medical attention. But just another black lady. She's just complaining. And left her to die.
Earn your PhD in THC monetization with CannabisRadio.com. Don't be late.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
We need to build a wall.
Okay. Maybe you're high, too.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
Remember, friends, there's more to life than marijuana. I just can't remember what it is. Why'd I come in here? You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. 23 after the hour, live from Washington, D.C. We're going to take a look at the other Washington, though. Washington State, up in the Pacific Northwest, one of the first two states to legalize cannabis. Some updates there going on in Washington. Q13 Fox in Seattle tells the story of the King County Council having a meeting and hearing from rural homeowners who want marijuana grow operations banned. One resident said, quote, "We come to you and ask you to stop this now, not a week from tomorrow, not a year down the road, but stop it now." Another resident said, "The odor. It's always the odor. Noise, the industrial look of high security fences and security lighting, increased traffic, fear of crime, and plummeting property values." So what they're talking about is the rural areas. Now, King County is where Seattle's located, but it does have some unincorporated rural areas, places like Enumclaw, which is where a couple of these people are talking about. And for this, I just have to go back to the restrictions that these type of people demanded for marijuana are part of the reason why they're dealing with the problems they're dealing with now. For instance, they've got this problem they call pot shop clustering near the unincorporated areas of Skyway and White Center. So all these pot shops have kind of clustered in one area. Well, the reason that happens is because when you pass these legalization laws, all these NIMBYs, not in my backyard people, require all of these restrictive zoning settings, like you have to be 1,000 feet away from a school or a park or a playground or a church or a youth center or a rehab center or a halfway house or another dispensary. And when you set up so many exclusionary zones, then you're left with just a few zones where people can set up, and that's what creates the clustering that they're all worried about. If you were to allow pot shops and allow marijuana grows in more places, they wouldn't end up being all clustered up. The other thing about this is when they complain about the odor, the noise, high security fences, security lighting, traffic, fear of crime, plummeting property values, those are the same kind of things that we could level against, a feedlot, a pasture with cows and the smell of cow manure. How many places in Washington State deal with the smell of a paper pulp processing plant? That terrible, terrible smell that comes off of those. I guess what I'm trying to say here is there's a lot of things in a city that can smell, pot being one of the least of them. But if we want to see these things go away, if you don't want to have such high security fences and lighting and traffic and all that, increase the access. Increase the places where marijuana can be grown. Allow larger farms in farm use areas. Washington State still has these caps on how big their marijuana processes can be. They still have bans on they got outdoor cultivation in Washington. It's Colorado that doesn't have outdoor cultivation. Excuse me there. But open it up more so that people don't have to have it all clustered into one location, and make it more accessible so the price continues to come down and the need for major high security fences and problems that these people are dealing with can be ameliorated, can be spread out. Fortunately, the county is moving slowly on this. The King County Council member Rod Dembowski said, quote, "What we have to decide is whether or not we want to require setbacks between pot shops. Some jurisdictions do. To date, we have not. But I want to make sure we aren't legislating based on fear, but on reality." And that's what a lot of this is. A lot of this is people that just don't like weed, and they're coming up with excuses why they're going to hate it. Another development in Washington State is the establishment of pot pesticide levels. The State Liquor and Cannabis Board has set for allowable levels on unapproved pesticides. And basically they've taken Oregon's rules and adopted them for Washington State. So now there'll be allowable levels of unapproved pesticides, right? So already with the approved pesticides, they've got, levels set. But these are for non-approved pesticides because there was complaints that there's no possibility you can get down to zero on a lot of these chemicals. They're the kind of things that can drift through the air from nearby food crops and provide a tiny reading on the tests. So there has to be some, it's like, and I hate to tell you this because it's true, but like for example, chocolate bars, there is a minimum level or a maximum level of rat droppings and insect parts that are allowed in chocolate. Did you know that? Yeah. There's a minimum allowed level of rat droppings and insect parts in your chocolate. It's like in the billionths, right? 1 part per billion or whatever. It's minuscule. You'll never notice it, right? But it recognizes the fact that it's impossible to make food grade chocolate without there being a microscopic, minuscule amount of rat droppings and or bug parts. It's kind of disgusting, I know, but it's just reality, right? Nothing is perfect, right? And that's what these rules are recognizing is when it comes to the pesticides, nothing's going to be perfect. So there are these tiny minimal amounts that they're going to allow now in Washington State. And the reason they have to do this, the states have to do this, is because the EPA is the federal agency that's normally in charge of this, figuring out what kind of pesticides you can use on apples and corn and wheat and so forth. But of course, the FDA can't tell you what pesticides are allowed on cannabis because as far as the FDA is concerned, cannabis doesn't exist. It's an illegal crop and nobody's allowed to farm it with any pesticides of any kind. So once again, we have this situation where the states are having to kind of make this up as they go for the lack of the federal government being involved in it in any way. And it's frustrating, but so far, if Oregon and Washington have adopted similar standards, and we may have this set up in California once they pass the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, and Colorado already has its marijuana enforcement division that has standards for these pesticides. We just may end up where the first legal states are going to set the standard, and then that will be what the federal government eventually adopts anyway. The other change that's happened in Washington State, this is a big one and has some people concerned. It's allowing out-of-state financiers in the marijuana industry, allowing out-of-state money to come into the state of Washington to fund marijuana businesses. Now, it had been a residency requirement. You had to have a 6-month residency to be in the legal pot industry in Washington State, but they dropped that on Wednesday. They still have to go through criminal background checks. They could only loan money to business owners, and they couldn't own stakes or control in Washington companies. They could just finance Washington pot. Now, smaller growers in Washington State are upset about this because they say it gives larger growers an advantage. With the state's cap on total farm area, I mentioned that before, they have a hard limit on how much land can be used for marijuana growing. It's not based on demand, it's an estimate. We think people will need this much marijuana, and for that you need X square feet, and that's what we'll allow. And of course, when they first did this led to prices as high as $25 a gram because they didn't grow enough marijuana for the demand. Now they've got too much marijuana for the demand and the prices are crashed. But with this cap on total farm area, the small growers say the only way for growers to expand is by buying or partnering with failing farms. So if you're a small guy and Bob and his farm is going out of business, you could buy up Bob's farm and double your farm. But what they're saying is that the large growers are going to have better ability to pull this off, especially now when they can attract out-of-state investors. On the other hand, some small growers argue that out-of-state financing helps because a lot of these smaller growers don't have access to capital, and they might have family members or friends with money out of state that might loan it to them. So there hasn't been unanimous opposition to this or unanimous approval of this amongst the growing community, amongst the entrepreneurs there in Washington State. But I do believe this is a change we're going to see for a lot of these states. Oregon does not have a out-of-state limit of any sort. California is, in its Adult Use of Marijuana Act, is restricting the development of so-called mega farms, mega grows, for 5 years. So there's going to be a 5-year moratorium on big grows in California to try to allow the existing industry players to get a foothold before national interests jump in. The other thing that's concerning about this out-of-state financing topic is the eventual repeal of federal prohibition. So long as it's been required that you had to be in-state financed, and so long as marijuana is a Schedule I federally prohibited drug, that has kept the big boys out of this game. That has kept Altria out, the former Philip Morris, right? It's kept all of the tobacco companies, all the alcohol companies out of this game. But if we remove these state residency requirements, and in the next 5 years, if the federal government drops the Schedule I designation of cannabis, we could see a flood of money into the currently legal states by some of these big capitalized investors. I welcome it myself. I don't fear the Walmart of weed. Some of our people do. They worry that, Philip Morris comes in and they're going to make the Marlboro of weed. Look, if it's affordable and it's good, what's the problem? I don't think any of these mass producers are ever going to outproduce a skilled, small artisan grow, but they don't have to, right? Budweiser makes Budweiser. Coors makes Coors. Miller makes Miller Lite, right? All these beers sell quite well, and they're not very good, but they're not bad, right? They're just kind of a standard, right? There's kind of a macro brew. The same thing's going to happen with cannabis. There's going to be the Marlboro of weed. There's going to be the Walmart of weed, and you'll buy that weed, and it'll be fairly cheap, and it'll be fairly good. It'll be fine. It'll be good for a lot of your casual tokers, people that, might do it once in a while. But you and me and the daily tokers out here, us reefer radicals, we're never going to stop enjoying finely cultivated, artisan, connoisseur cannabis. There's room for everybody. You can be a small grower with high-end weed, or you could be Budweiser with low-end weed. There's room for all of us, and no need to fear more money coming into this, because that just means quicker to becoming legal. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back from Washington, D.C. right after this.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Forwarding the cause of legalization and research of the growing cannabis industry, one podcast at a time. The Cannabis Radio Network.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
I said palm trees, make California.
Yo, it's your boy TJ, Trinidad James. You're listening to Dr. Bina on Cannabis Confidential. LA, what up?
Nickname James, man. I'm worried like a lake. I need to...
People were so excited to see you supporting our industry, and it's so important to see people who are mainstream, who are out there, that people look up to.
That was my first one ever going to, so that was definitely a big deal for me. It's not just, oh man, just come smoke a bunch of joints. It's a lot of science into it. It's way more interesting than a lot of people might think who look down, per se, on what we enjoy.
Cannabis Confidential, only on CannabisRadio.com.
I feel like palm trees, make California.
This is the Russ Belville Show, annoying Kevin Sabet since 2012.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
Warning, hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they pay me to say that. This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everyone. 39 after the hour here in Washington, D.C. Make sure you join us tomorrow. We've got a great show, a special double interview with Mickey Norris and Lauren Vasquez from the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. Let's get it right, California. We're going to be talking about the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, legalization in 2016. We'll also take your calls if you've got questions about how the Adult Use of Marijuana Act might impact medical marijuana or just your life in general. You can give us a call. It'll be tomorrow at past. That would be 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific time. We'll also have some highlights of the DC Cannabis Campaign and Weed for Warriors protest on Harry J. Anslinger's birthday, which is tomorrow. Harry J. Anslinger's birthday, they're going to protest at 5:20 in front of the White House. I'll run out there, get some audio, and run back as quick as I can to put it on the show for you. That's coming up on tomorrow's show. Check us out, the Russ Belville Show, live on CannabisRadio.com, followed by the Stoner Jesus Show. Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, Stoner Jesus is live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The greatest podcast ever created. Check out Stoner Jesus. Winding things up here for the weed news, though, I got a couple of other stories that I wanted to get to. One of them has to do with football and Colorado. It's the Denver Broncos, who play at what is called Mile High Stadium. And that's what I will always call it, ladies and gentlemen. It is Mile High Stadium. I don't care which corporation buys naming rights to it. It's Mile High Stadium. I'm a longtime football fan, and for me, there's just some names that, shouldn't be changed. I'm actually a longtime sports fan. I'm going to say sports as well, because Portland's arena will always be the Rose Garden. I will never call it the Moda Center. It's the Rose Garden. But anyway, Mile High Stadium has had some other names. And most recently, it's been called Sports Authority Field at Mile High Stadium. Sports Authority, of course, being one of these big box sporting goods chains. Well, it's now failing. The Sports Authority people are going through bankruptcy, and they can't afford the naming rights on the stadium, which is, I'm looking for the price here. I don't know what the cost will be, but anyway, it turns out now that Open Vape, the makers of cannabis vaporizer cartridges, want the naming rights to the stadium. They submitted a proposal for Open Vape to be called Open Vape at Mile High. Now, I have a prediction. There's no chance in hell this is going to happen. I'm just telling you, there is no chance in hell this is going to happen. The NFL is never going to allow the Denver Broncos to have a pot company sponsoring the name of their stadium. They're never going to have a situation where the sports anchors on CBS, NBC, and ESPN and Fox are regularly saying, coming to you from Open Vape at Mile High. It's not going to happen. I want to be wrong on this. I'd love to be wrong on this. Please prove me wrong on this, but I don't see it happening. I do not see the NFL allowing this to happen. Now, the proposal from Open Vape is $6 million a year in a deal that's expected to last till 2021. So a 5-year deal, $6 million a year, $30 million. Wow. Who knew Open Vape was making that much money, huh? They got $6 million a year they can just blow on naming rights to a stadium. Hey, Open Vape, you can spend a whole lot less and sponsor my Radical Rant segment. It could be a whole lot less than $6 million a year. I assure you of that. But they point out the NFL players and the Gridiron Cannabis Coalition that are working with medical marijuana to try to deal with chronic traumatic encephalopathy and concussions and all that. Of course, Eugene Monroe, the current tackle for the Baltimore Ravens, has made news lately. Former players like Nate Jackson and Jake Plummer of the Denver Broncos are among others, like Kyle Turley, Ricky Williams, Jim McMahon, so many that are coming out now to say that the NFL needs to get with it on medical marijuana. But I just can't imagine that they're gonna pull this off. I mean, we've got now 25 states that we could call medical marijuana states. Louisiana passing its bill just today to become the 25th. But I just can't imagine it. They've got some great concept stuff here on newcannabisventures.com. They've got the picture and a little video of what it would be like to have Open Vape at Mile High. I don't see it happening, people. I just don't see it happening. All right, let me get to a very important story that's up on MaryJane.com, MERRY, Mary Jane. And it illustrates, it goes into a subject that I've been talking about for a while, and I've been warning people, be careful what you wish for. And the title of the story is The Downside to the DEA Rescheduling Cannabis. Subhead, the move could annihilate thousands of medical marijuana businesses currently in operation. A lot of people aren't thinking of this, but the Controlled Substances Act sets marijuana as a Schedule I drug, right? Absolutely no medical use, can't do anything with it. Absolutely forbidden. The problem, though, is if you drop this down to Schedule II, you're putting it in the same class as OxyContin, morphine, opium, cocaine, and methamphetamine. Schedule II drugs have some pretty rigorous standards. Your prescription has to be limited. Can only be for I think 30 days or 60 days. You have to get an in-person refill. You can't phone it in, right? Very strictly regulated. So if cannabis gets moved down to Schedule II, this could actually be devastating for some of these, most of the medical marijuana companies that are flourishing in California for sure, but also a lot of these other states. Brandon Whitley, he's with Aquarius Cannabis, says, quote, the cost to bring a Schedule II drug to market is enormous, to the level that not a single company in the cannabis industry right now could afford to do so. The knowledge gap between government regulators and outside companies that would come into the industry would be enormous, and the industry as we know it would be dead, end quote. It's a very good point. We got a situation. In Rolling Stone, they write, if the federal government determines that medical marijuana must be subjected to FDA approval, companies would have to enter a process that can take years to complete and cost more than $1 billion per product. Few, if any, cannabis companies in the U.S. have the resources for that, which might open the door for big pharma to muscle in and take over the business. Dean Heiser, chief legal strategist at LiveWell, one of Colorado's largest marijuana companies, says, quote, they could put every medical provider in the country out of business in a matter of months. And of course, FDA approval for these kind of things has to be done in, individual compounds, like when they got THC and they put it into Marinol. We'll see the same thing with THCV, CBD, CBG, and so on. So the writer here says, imagine now that it's 2018. Every dispensary in every state with medical and recreational cannabis is either shut down or operating illegally. They've been institutionally replaced with a trip to Walgreens to get cannabis pills, which may be the only legal cannabis products on the market. The possession of flowers, hash, and edibles could be criminal offenses, and the cannabis black market and cartel trade routes could be gaining strength again. So the only real solution here is not rescheduling. It's descheduling. And they point out that Bernie Sanders introduced a bill to deschedule cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, put it in the same class as cigarettes and alcohol, which are not classified by the DEA. Of course, it didn't get much support. No other senator stepped forward to co-sponsor the bill. And this is a shame because descheduling would put it in a situation where the states could regulate it, like they do alcohol and tobacco. And John Getman, communications director for NORML, says, quote, this is not a matter of descheduling as many have begun to describe it, as this term actually invokes the procedures of the Controlled Substances Act to remove a drug from its regulatory provisions. Instead, cannabis should be removed from the regulatory jurisdiction of the Controlled Substances Act and regulated by new laws modeled on federal regulations for alcohol and tobacco. Now, we are close to a decision on this. It's been said that in less than 2 months, by the end of June, it was promised that the DEA will make a decision on what to do about cannabis scheduling. And I'm telling you, if they come back with a decision that needs to be Schedule 2 or Schedule 3, we've got a big fight on our hands, people. Because Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 would make every medical marijuana dispensary in America operating outside of the law, of the federal law. I mean, they are already, but you know what I'm saying? It's the difference between going in with a raid and going in with an injunction. Once marijuana gets put to Schedule 2 or Schedule 3, the battles go to the courts. The battles go to the FDA. They go to these regulatory agencies, and we will lose these battles. This is why it's so important that we fight this battle for full cannabis legalization. That's why the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, it is critical that we pass it this year. There's no time to wait. These people that say, oh, we'll get a better deal in 2018. You may not. If it goes down in 2016 and then come 2017, we get a Republican administration or we get a rescheduling of cannabis, whatever you put on the ballot for 2018 might be dead on arrival. Might be illegal before it's even passed. We have got to get as many states as we can in the legal whole plant cannabis category as soon as we can to make it impossible, to make it impractical for them to want to reschedule it to 2 or 3 and to try to roll back 8 or 9 or 10 states that have whole plant cannabis out there. We can see that medical's not the way to do that anymore. Louisiana just became the 4th state now in a row to have no plant medical marijuana. All pills, all inhalers, all oils. It's exactly the direction that rescheduling would take cannabis. The medical cannabis laws that you see now in Minnesota, New York, Pennsylvania, and now Louisiana are custom tailored for the rescheduling of cannabis. These medical cannabis laws where they will allow you to have plant, but you can't grow it yourself. You have to buy it out of a dispensary. Think Michigan and Arizona, New York, Delaware, those kind of places. It won't be too hard for those states to get rid of all their plant inventory and switch to the Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 drugs. I'm telling you, folks, the fight for whole plant cannabis is the fight for legalization and descheduling. Nothing else is going to work at this point. And if we keep fighting for medical only, our marijuana will become only medical. We're back in just 2 minutes to wrap things up here from Washington, D.C. I'm Radical Russ. Stick around.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Next to THC and CBD, you can now add CBR to your cannabis vernacular. CBR as in CannabisRadio.com.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
It's time for Cannabis Facts About Alzheimer's from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A new Florida study in the journal Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis promotes the growth of healthy new brain tissue. It can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A long-term study by Ohio State University's Professor Gary Wenk concludes that people who regularly use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than others. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors, and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
I also believe we need a fence. The problem is if El Chapo builds a tunnel under the fence, we have to be able to deal with that too.
Okay. Maybe you're high, too.
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
Yarr, thar be pirates here. Har, 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 har. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Quick breaking news coming out of the state of Rhode Island. The Senate there in the Ocean State has added PTSD as a medical marijuana qualifying condition and set up a fast track for hospice patients to be able to qualify for medical cannabis. Great news there. Also wanted to bring up what's going on in Arizona. So Arizona's got a legalization initiative, the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, or CRMLA, and that's the brand that MPP is using for their legalization. So there's a CRMLA in Arizona, Nevada, Massachusetts, and Maine. There's 4 CRMLAs, but this Arizona one has called on the leaders of the opposition to return the donations they receive from the alcohol industry. According to a report from the Phoenix New Times, Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy, the anti-group, received $10,000 from the Arizona Wine and Spirits Association. Now, the people that are the opponents keep saying that they're against marijuana legalization because it's too dangerous for adult use. But since marijuana is objectively less harmful than alcohol, it smacks of hypocrisy for them to be taking $10,000 from the harmful drug. Once again, they don't like to see any competition. They know people that are smoking weed don't drink as much. Good for them for calling out the alcohol industry. Folks, that's all the time we got for today. Live from Washington, D.C., I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.
I'm Radical Russ from the Russ Belville Show.
Washington, it has passed. The news organizations are calling it.
Tell everybody in the red states how great legal weed is. Yeah, looking forward to legal weed here in the state of Oregon. It's the Russ Belville Show, the NPR of POT, weekdays live at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, exclusively on CannabisRadio.com.
Previously on the Stoner Jesus Show.
St. Paul's doing good work.
It's my